There comes a moment in every human life when the noise quiets, when the chase ends, not because you have found what you sought, but because you finally realized there was never anything to chase. You stand still, and in that stillness, you begin to see the shadow of yourself move. It's strange, isn't it, how the darker parts of us only become visible when the light stops flickering. Carl Jung once wrote that the shadow is everything we refuse to be. The anger we bury, the envy we conceal, the fear we silence. But when you detach, when you stop running from the endless need to be seen, loved, or approved, those hidden fragments begin to return. Detachment is not indifference. It is not coldness or withdrawal from the world. It is the quiet courage to no longer beg for what was never yours to begin with. And it's only then, when your hands are empty, that life begins to return what truly belongs to you. We spend years reaching for success, for love, for meaning, believing that fulfillment is something we must acquire. But Jung's psychology teaches the opposite. What you chase runs away. What you embrace transforms. So much of our suffering comes from resistance, from trying to be what the world finds acceptable. You wear masks, you shape your smile, you speak carefully, never too raw, never too real. And yet, behind that fragile performance, the soul grows restless. The unconscious does not forget. Every emotion you repress waits like an echo. Every truth you deny becomes a shadow following your every step. To detach is to finally turn around and face it. To stop bargaining with love. To stop clinging to identities that crumble the moment you are unseen. It's the slow dismantling of illusion. The death of the need to be someone. In the silence that follows, you begin to meet what you've always been avoiding. Your loneliness, your anger, your fear of being unworthy. And yet, within that encounter, something luminous stirs, because what you run from controls you, but what you face becomes your ally. When you detach, you stop feeding the illusions that keep you small. And suddenly, the things that were once slipping away, love, peace, purpose, start to find their way back. Not because you demanded them, but because you finally became someone who no longer needed to. This is the paradox of awakening. Only when you stop trying to possess life does life begin to embrace you. We live in an age of constant grasping, a world addicted to validation. The screen glows, the notifications whisper, "You matter, you matter, you matter." And yet, beneath that endless affirmation lies a deep and silent exhaustion. We have mistaken connection for attention. We mistake comfort for peace. And in this confusion, our souls grow hungry, not for more love, but for something real enough to hold without fear of losing it. Carl Jung said that what you resist not only persists, it grows stronger. We resist pain, and so it becomes the quiet ruler of our days. We resist solitude, and so we become more isolated. We resist fear, and so we live our lives from within it. The modern spirit hides behind positivity. We are told to stay grateful, to think happy thoughts, to vibrate higher. But beneath that bright surface, a darker current moves. Unacknowledged sadness, unspoken rage, unlived potential. When you deny the shadow, you deny half your soul. You divide yourself into two, the self you show and the self you suppress. And every day you act from that split, the unconscious keeps calling out, begging to be seen, to be integrated, to be made whole. Look around. How many smiles do you see that are masks? How many voices speak with conviction yet tremble underneath? How many of us build lives that look perfect, only to find ourselves strangers in our own reflection? You see, repression has a scent. It's the scent of forced laughter, of polite lies, of quiet desperation wrapped in the perfume of success. And the more we hide what hurts, the more it leaks through the cracks. In our relationships, our art, our silence. We fall in love with projections, not people. We chase dreams not because we desire them, but because we fear standing still. We try to heal by escaping, but in doing so, we move further from what actually needs our attention. To detach, then, is not an act of escape. It is an act of honesty. It's the slow unlearning of false peace, the gentle destruction of every mask that promised to protect you, but only kept you numb. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is a mirror. It shows us where we have abandoned ourselves, and yet we treat it like an intruder. We medicate it, distract it, outrun it, anything but listen. But silence, if you let it, can become sacred, because in that silence, the voice of the unconscious begins to speak. It whispers truths you've long buried, that your anger is not evil, it is a call for respect, that your sadness is not weakness, it is evidence of love, that your fear is not failure, it is the guardian of your boundaries. This is the hidden law of suffering. What you suppress becomes the architect of your fate, and somewhere inside you already know this. You can feel it in the moments of stillness, that faint, uneasy pulse beneath the surface of your contentment. You sense that something in you is waiting, something you have exiled but that still remembers your name. That is the shadow. It is not your enemy, it is your forgotten self, knocking gently at the door. And until you open that door, no amount of light will ever feel like home. There comes a moment in the quiet when the facade begins to tremble, and you can no longer pretend that the person you've been performing is who you truly are. It doesn't happen in a dramatic flash of enlightenment. It happens in stillness, when the world finally stops demanding, and you are left alone with the truth that your own soul has been waiting to tell you. Carl Jung called it the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming whole, of reconciling the opposites within you, light and darkness, love and rage, humility and pride. He understood that the shadow is not the enemy of the self, it is the missing piece of it, and to become whole, you must turn toward it with the same compassion you would offer a frightened child. You see, the unconscious does not want to destroy you. It wants to be acknowledged, it wants its pain to be witnessed, because only what is made conscious can be healed. We spend years fearing the darkness within us, imagining that if we look too closely, we would fall apart. But in truth, the darkness is not bottomless. It is a room, one you have simply refused to enter. Inside that room lies every part of you that was exiled, the voice that was silenced to keep the peace, the strength you buried so others wouldn't feel small, the creativity that was labeled impractical, the tears you swallowed because you needed to be strong. To meet the shadow is to reclaim these fragments. It is to stand before the chaos of your own soul and say, I see you, I won't run anymore. It feels like dying, because a part of you does die. The false self, the mask, the illusion that you are only light and never dark. But in that death, something eternal awakens. The ancient Stoics understood this too. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. To face what blocks you isn't punishment. It is the path itself. Your shadow is not an obstacle to your evolution. It is the gateway to it. The more you resist your darkness, the more it governs you. But the moment you turn toward it, you strip it of its power. The fear dissolves because it is met with awareness, not avoidance. You realize that the monster was never outside. It was your own reflection, distorted by shame. And suddenly, the paradox of wholeness reveals itself. You are not meant to be pure. You are meant to be complete. Light without darkness is blindness. Compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. Strength without humility becomes tyranny. Wholeness is not perfection, it is balance. It is the quiet recognition that you can be both gentle and fierce, both forgiving and firm, both broken and divine. When you stop rejecting your contradictions, you stop being torn apart by them. The war within you ends not through victory, but through integration. And when that happens, something extraordinary occurs. The world begins to reflect back a peace you have never known. Not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer looking for yourself within it. To integrate the shadow is to remember that everything you sought in others was simply a reflection of what you had abandoned in yourself. And when you finally embrace all that you are, the light, the dark, the silent, the wild, life itself seems to exhale. You no longer chase what is meant for you. You attract it effortlessly, because you have become what you were seeking all along. This is the secret of detachment. It is not withdrawal, it is reunion. When you detach, you stop clinging to fragments, and in doing so, you make room for the whole. Integration is not a single moment of insight. It is a practice, a daily act of remembering who you are when the world forgets to see you. And the paradox of transformation is that it begins not with addition, but subtraction. To become whole, you must let fall everything that isn't essential, not by force, but through awareness. the masks, the expectations, the borrowed beliefs, they dissolve the moment you stop needing them. Carl Jung taught that transformation occurs when the conscious and the unconscious meet, not in battle, but in dialogue. When the thinking mind begins to listen to the feeling soul, when logic bows its head before emotion, and both learn that they were never enemies. That is how integration begins. Not through control, but through conversation. Ask yourself, what part of me have I been silencing? What emotion do I refuse to feel because it threatens the story I tell about myself? Where do I pretend to be kind when I am merely afraid of confrontation? Where do I perform strength when I am truly longing to rest? These questions are not meant to punish you. They are keys. They unlock the rooms of the unconscious, and in each one you will find a piece of your truth waiting patiently to be remembered. Detachment is the bridge that leads you there. It is not turning away from life. It is turning toward yourself without the noise of need. When you detach, you stop seeking validation for your feelings. You let them exist. You let them rise, speak, and dissolve in their own rhythm. You begin to see that emotion is not an enemy. It is information. Anger tells you where your boundaries are. Sadness shows you what you value. Fear reveals where your courage is waiting. To live consciously is to listen to these signals without judgment, without haste. You stop asking, how do I get rid of this? And instead ask, what is this trying to show me? That is the moment when darkness becomes teacher. In relationships, this understanding changes everything. When you stop needing others to complete you, you start meeting them as equals. Not saviors, not threats, but mirrors. You no longer love out of hunger. You love out of wholeness. You stop trying to control people, because you understand that what belongs to you will recognize you, not because of effort, but resonance. In solitude, detachment becomes your sanctuary. You no longer fear being alone, because you have met the one person who will never abandon you, yourself. In that stillness, you discover what peace actually feels like, not the absence of noise, but the absence of inner resistance. Even in leadership, the integrated soul moves differently. It no longer commands through fear or appeasement. It acts from clarity. It is not concerned with image, but with integrity. Because once you have made peace with your own shadow, no one else's opinion can enslave you. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. To detach, to integrate, to see clearly. This is the quiet revolution of the self. Transformation is not loud. It doesn't announce itself in grand gestures or sudden miracles. It happens in the small choices. In the moment you tell the truth instead of performing it. In the breath you take before reacting. In the tenderness you offer to the parts of yourself you once despised. Every act of awareness is an act of rebirth. And the more you practice this inner seeing, the more you realize that nothing external ever had power over you. It was never about changing the world to find peace. It was about changing your relationship with yourself, so the world could finally mirror back the peace you already carry. To integrate the shadow is to reclaim your sovereignty. To detach is to return home. And home is not a place. It is a state of being. There is a silence that comes after transformation. Not the silence of emptiness, but of completion. You no longer feel the frantic pulse of needing to be understood. You no longer tremble at the thought of being unseen. There is no war inside you anymore. Only the quiet rhythm of something vast and steady. Acceptance. When you detach, you return everything that isn't truly yours. The borrowed expectations, the labels, the invisible debts of emotion. And in that surrender, life gives back what always was. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious is not a pit of darkness, but a well of creation. Once you face it, once you draw from it with awareness, you begin to live with a different kind of intelligence, one born from the marriage of shadow and light. This is the peace that follows integration, not a constant happiness, but an unshakable groundedness. You still feel pain, you still face loss, but now nothing owns you. You watch emotions rise and fall like waves. You let them speak, and then you let them go, because you know that what you are cannot be reduced to what you feel. The world still moves with noise and distraction, but within you a space opens, a space wide enough to hold both the sorrow of existence and the miracle of simply being alive. This is the quiet paradox of detachment. You stop clinging, and somehow everything you once chased begins to return, not as possession, but as participation. Love comes back, but now it feels free. Peace comes back, but now it feels earned. Purpose comes back, but now it feels real. You have not lost the world, you have simply stopped mistaking it for yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That is what you have built, a refuge within, a still lake where truth can finally reflect without distortion. And in that reflection, you see it clearly. The person you tried to become was never the goal. The one who was quietly waiting underneath, that is who you were meant to meet. When you detach, you don't lose your humanity, you rediscover it. You remember that love is not dependency, that strength is not resistance, that peace is not passivity. You begin to live with an open hand, ready to receive, ready to release, because what flows to you freely was never meant to be held by force. Wholeness is not perfection, it is presence. It is the soft light that appears after the storm, not because the clouds vanished, but because you learned to see beauty even in the gray. And so, you stand here now, not above your shadow, but beside it. Not as master and servant, but as equals, two halves of the same soul, finally reunited. You have become the witness, the space in which light and darkness can coexist without conflict. And that is freedom, because when you detach, you don't abandon the world. You return to it, whole, unafraid, no longer searching for yourself in the faces of others, but meeting life with quiet eyes and an open heart. The journey ends where it began, in stillness, in presence, in truth. You breathe. You exist, and for the first time, that is enough. When you detach, everything comes back, not because you demanded it, but because you finally remembered who you are.